Welcome to another Fintech Talks episode from the Georgia Fintech Academy. I am excited to present to you a group conversation here today on the topic of AI. From the Fintech Talks platform, we've had many conversations over the past year, just focused on a variety of emerging trends in the industry. AI is, of course, something that is not uncommon. We talk about it almost every day. It is everywhere. You cannot even escape it. We're even exploring now some of the operational challenges and opportunities there are when adopting AI, what that means. And I'm really excited to have Tom Pierce with us today from Corpay. He is the Chief AI Officer as well as head of the AI Center of Excellence. Tom, it's so nice to have you today.
Thanks, Laura. It's a pleasure to be here.
Introduce yourself for our audience really briefly.
Sure. Again, my name is Tom Pierce. I am the Chief AI Officer of Corpay. Corpay is a financial services company. We provide business to business and business to consumer payments products for our customers. We serve most of the major geographies around the world, and it's grown very rapidly through acquisition. So we've had a very exciting time, and we've become a very big fintech.
So thank you, Tom, for joining us today, and thank you, Corpay, for your continued sponsorship and engagement with helping. Tiffany, I'm so excited to have you here today. We recently just got out of an amazing Paytech Women's Summit where we got to network and meet with different industry leaders talking
That's
about a
awesome.
variety of different topics, but also focused on, personal development as well. Tiffany, it's so great to have you.
Thank you for having me. And I'll just introduce myself briefly. I'm a graduate student at Kennesaw State University, getting my master's in digital finance technology, where I focus on payments and cybersecurity. I'm passionate about exploring how emerging technologies such as AI are transforming our financial services for today and as well as the future. With that being said, I'd like to ask you, Tom, what when you first built Corpay's AI Center, what's one assumption that you had that turned out quite differently?
Yeah, I really thought that we would have trouble getting people excited and participating and using AI in the company. And the reason I thought that is because there's so much fear, uncertainty, and doubt right now in the media about the impact of AI on everybody's jobs and, certain industries and that kind of thing. But I was very pleasantly surprised. Everybody in the company is very aligned and very interested. I knew that the senior executives were interested, but as we started working more with other teams, broader business teams, everybody really leaned in and everybody is excited to see how AI can help with their daily work.
Wow. That's
Always a good thing
exciting
to
because you
hear.
hear kind of like a little bit of apprehension sometimes, depending on the demographic, maybe even. Oh,
Right.
some folks that are early adopters, and then some that are risk adverse as well, as we've seen. You've done a good job at building a framework, thinking about productivity, thinking about innovation, thinking about governance, all these other pieces that have to consider as part of like operations. What was the trigger to initiate? Like, now this is the right time.
We've been doing AI in various capacities for several years, right? And I think most people have some form of AI if you're a company of a certain size. But the large language model type AI, this chat capability and things like that, really started off by just generating text, doing simple responses. That wasn't that compelling for us. But when we saw that the models could start taking action, which has been a growing capability since earlier this year, that was a real tipping point. Because now that the models can take autonomous action, it opens up all kinds of possibilities for automation, for ways to impact day to day work. So that was really the catalyst for us. And then we could see once that happened how we could link the use of AI to P&L value. Because now you're really talking about impacting the costs of the company, impacting the revenue generation of the company in a more autonomous 24 way.
Okay. Well, I know timing is everything. So once you established that this was the right time, how did you decide which projects to pursue for like proof of concept or how they impact different teams and the line of business, different lines of business?
Yeah, for us, when we tackle projects as the central AI COE, we want to find things that are broadly enterprise valuable, right?
Okay.
So it's very important that this top-down push that the COE is putting on AI can be felt across all the business teams or as many as possible. So we have different places that we get ideas for those kind of projects. Some of them are existing things that individual business teams have been doing that they realize or we realize might be more broadly applicable. We look at things out in the world, things that are going on with other companies, and see if that would be applicable. And so maybe that becomes a project or a POC. And then also, my team, we sit down with business people and we say, hey, what are your problems? And then we try to apply AI to those problems.
I recall my experience implementing a PCI at a bank for the first time, setting up a governance model and a cadence across the broader enterprise, bringing every CIO from different lines of business together. But getting people to like march to the same tune, to the same beat is a lot more difficult than it sounds. What you're talking about requires a lot of rigor, a lot of process, thorough communication. Are there any lessons learned that you might give like a peer who's also kind of embarking on uh, cultivating that type of structure within their own organization?
It's about communication. So
Mm,
um, I think we've tried to do some communication. We're not operating in a vacuum. So we've tried to communicate through various methods. We have a collaboration hub, as we refer to it, which is both a regular meeting of people, of practitioners, as well as an online presence. We've communicated various things through the collaboration hub. We've communicated through attending staff meetings. I've been speaking at leaders' town halls, so the various leaders around the company. And I would say the feedback is we're still not there in terms of an
mm,
amount of conversation and quality of conversation. So what we're doing is we're really doubling down on that. And I've got someone on my team now who's focused on working with the individual employees as well as groups of employees to help make them aware of what we're doing and how to use AI in their work. We're also building training programs and we're investing in developing out our internal online presence with some real developers. So I would say communication is huge, especially with emerging technologies, especially with centralized groups. And AI, especially in our case, is both an emerging technology and a centralized group. So communicate, communicate, communicate.
As I'm hearing you talk about some of these efficiencies operationally you guys are putting in place as the center of excellence, an entity that's actually based, it's rooted within your broader enterprise organization. How do you define success? Like, what measurable impact, I guess, has AI made from a business perspective?
Yeah. So again, it kind of goes back to broad value creation, right? So for us, being successful as an AI COE would be having AI providing value in people's
mhm,
work lives everywhere possible. That's a pretty big statement. But when you get down to what value really is, we want to quantify that back to dollars and cents, real business terms, right? Business people work on dollars and cents. So even when we're getting some soft justification, we want to drive that back to, okay, how can we talk about that soft justification maybe in more of dollars and cents? And I think that's key to what we're trying to accomplish with generating value and how we measure it. There's various techniques out there for measuring productivity and all those kind of things. I think you just need to pick one because every organization's different and you need to tailor that to the organization that you're in. I also think that you shouldn't shy away from trying to put dollars on productivity. People do that a lot because they're concerned that if they put dollars on Tiffany's productivity gains that we're going to have to lose Tiffany. We're going to have to get rid of Tiffany because we've automated Tiffany, right?
Yeah.
And that's not really the point, right? The point is to show, hey, we're increasing value to the company, whether it's cost reduction by getting rid of Tiffany or giving Tiffany the ability to do more work. So that's cost avoidance, or even generating revenue. So I think you can't shy away from getting back to dollars and cents.
I'm good at Tom. I don't know if you've seen the news around Klarna. Back in, I think it was early last year, they published this whole stat around 70% of their contact center was gonna be offloaded to AI, and then
Wow.
they've since retracted that statement, and they're recalling, uh,
Yes.
some of the operational resources that they had previously, terminated, which I find interesting. People jump the gun with the AI thing, and I think we've been doing this for years as far as business casing and, to your point, trying to calculate the value. But when it comes to like the productivity, I think there's a risk there and not necessarily going enough and doing your due diligence to really understand what the value is and all the different touch points of value. Because you define many different areas of value that it really brings. And some of those also need to be brought into the fold in that conversation from a leadership perspective as well, right?
Well, absolutely. And you also can't overvalue things, which I think happened a lot in previous years, previous decades, where people justified things like paperless office with these massive numbers on productivity, and everybody soured, right? Everybody said, no, that's not real, right? But I think to your point, you got to be sensible. You got to be, very willing to be open about it doesn't provide as much benefit as we
Mhm.
thought. So you can't use it to justify the toys, right? You can't use it to justify the toy purchase. So, but yeah, I think what we've been seeing with Klarna and others is good stories for the
Yeah,
media.
yeah,
I mean, not to be too cynical, I think there's been some good stories for the media, but I don't think in practice that is something you should pursue.
yeah.
And that's true. Because you mentioned how AI is affecting productivity in the workplace. So, from your perspective, how do you see AI affecting how teams work from day to day? Do you think people are learning new skills? Are they looking for new roles? How do you see it?
Yeah, so we're real early, right? We're early days on all this, even though if you listen to people, they're like, oh, this type of AI has been out for years. But really, the technologies continue to evolve and get more useful and take action, right?
Right.
So I think what we're seeing in our company is we're already starting to see the benefits of people writing more clearly, expressing themselves more completely, deeper research happening
Mhm.
than was happening before because it's easier to do. Even if you're providing the data, the AI can help correlate and understand the data. We're seeing those kind of benefits. One of the funny benefits to me is that me personally, I procrastinate a little bit less. So
Well, that's good.
with AI doing some of the drudgery and the upfront things that I find challenging to get started when I start a bigger task or project, it takes away the excuse of not starting. And
Right.
I've checked around with some colleagues and they agree with me. They're like, yeah, I'm procrastinating less. So less procrastination results in more initiative, and that's a good thing for everybody.
Well, for me personally, if I had to diagnose why I procrastinate, it's either something I hate doing, I dread doing,
Mm.
or I just don't know where to start. And I can have this mechanism that really anonymizes myself because it's not necessarily it's like having a therapist that is
Right.
being held every conversation is held in private. And I can do kind of sanity check with generative AI platform. I can, have it kinda help list me next steps and
Mhm.
think about some of the considerations I might not have considered. Even thinking about the fact that it's not a human, it can analyze what perceptions, things that I might not necessarily I might be blind to, and it could provide me some alternative, like, path forward, and then I can make that decision. I love that you said that 'cause I definitely use that for that.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
even
One
like
of Sorry. Go ahead,
No, I
Tiff.
was just gonna say even AI reading your emails to tell you what are action items or giving you the highlights so that you don't have to read every single word. it gives you the overview.
Yeah, and one of the interesting things I learned this fall from one of the very popular large language model providers was that they actively build in psychometrics and understanding of human intent. Like they're
Mhm.
specifically building that into the models, and the models are getting increasingly good at that kind of thing. So
Yeah, natural language.
I
Yeah.
think that is another, I said taking action makes it more useful, but I think that's another thing based on what we've been talking about that makes it more useful is it can also understand they're doing a better job of understanding the intent behind an email, like you mentioned, so it's pretty interesting.
Well, thinking about internally as you guys are evaluating, different AI application, for lack of a better word, across the organization, what are the indicators for you as a leader to determine something's ready to scale? Like we've gone through a pilot or we're ready to go to the next phase. What does that look like?
Yeah. So for us, the solution has to be working well in a particular context. So if it's a solution that's for a particular business team, it needs to be working pretty well for that business team. Right. And they're getting real value that they can, again, talk to me in dollars and cents about. The other thing is it has to make financial sense to scale. So what I mean by that is if you're going to take something from a small context and make it enterprise scale, the the return on investment has to be there. And we don't want to do things like, hey, we invested $100,000 to save $110,000, right? That's that's absolutely crazy. What we want to do is see multiples, right? Multiples for return on investment. And so that's really what we're looking for is does it work well? Is it proven? So we prove it in a context, we make the business case, and then we scale it. That's generally the model we follow.
I just curious, going deeper into that same question,
Sure.
internally, are there, I guess, you, as a center of excellence, you guys are showcasing this to other units, other areas within the organization so they can
Mm.
see kind of just the application, but where you're talking about the successes and maybe the lessons learned coming out through that?
That's right. Yes. And that goes back to communication, right? It's all kind of tied together. So, finding the right venues to do that. The thing that I think people don't often get to see in a company that's structured like ours. So, our company is managed as separate business units, right? So, what happens within a business unit, this happens within teams too, but what happens within a business unit is they get focused on their line of business, their products, their way they work. That kind of thing. And so they don't get to see, they don't have visibility into the innovations or the activities that are going on in other lines of business a lot, right? So I think one of the great things that I'm enjoying about being in AI, having a centralized team like the Center of Excellence, is being able to share those things across the enterprise and make people aware that Tiffany came up with a great idea for managing her email, right? And other people need that, right? So I think that's super exciting to me and my team.
I think, historically, especially for me coming from banking, everything was in silos. And to be honest, as like agile and the word innovation was, starting to become adopted, they created these like silos of innovation. Like
Yeah, that's it.
oh, that,
That's
like,
right.
bringing it all together to your point, I imagine there being, like, maybe a road show or an innovation day or, some sort of, like, fair, celebrating some of the innovative solutions that, internally that, you're using so that you can kinda keep that share the love and share the wealth of knowledge across the enterprise.
I'm going to write that down. I'm writing
I know.
that down. Can I take that? Innovation Day. Got
You
it.
can have it as long as I'm invited, Tom, I wanna be
All
there.
right. Deals.
All right, so shifting into our favorite subject, ethics and governance.
All right.
AI governance is crucial. It's critical more now than ever. I mean, from a risk and reputation, a reputational risk, I should say, perspective to the ensuring ethical, practices across the organization during those footprint or patterns of AI. How did you come around establishing what the standards are? And I'm assuming it evolves out over time, but how did you come up with those initial standards?
So the principle that we're using is that we've always had ethical and regulatory standards, right? Financial services are highly regulated. The type of financial services we do are highly regulated. A lot of standards around how you issue credit, who you issue credit to, money movement, all that. So as a basis for how we think about AI, we want the AI to adhere to those same standards that a human adheres to. So that's kind of the starting point for us is, hey, if we don't believe AI can be fair, if it can't make those judgment calls, then maybe it's not a right fit for AI. In establishing those guidelines, they have to be expanded, or the existing guidelines have to be expanded given the technology to let our employees know that you should not involve AI in these things, or it's okay to involve AI in these activities. But, for us, where AI could be used in the middle of a process that has a lot of risk or ethics or regulation around it, we're going to be very cautious about putting AI in there. So what we're going to do is, we might use AI for some of the activities around that process, or that, in that process, such as gathering information and validating information, those kind of things. But we're going to keep the key decisions and, the way things really work with the existing process so that we can make sure that we don't run afoul of any kind of ethics or regulation just because we're using AI. So I'd say we're setting standards based on our existing standards and then being judicious about where we use AI in those really sensitive areas.
Well, we typically talk about like certain process and as a whole versus
Mhm.
breaking it down to the task level. And so there could be some efficiencies gained by like leveraging it to maybe complete all of the administrative work, but then you add the human oversight, and then all of the risk sensitive tasks are done by a human. You kind of eliminate or reduce substantially the risk as a whole overall.
Absolutely, and these technologies are very good at um, being consistent,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, they don't get tired if if they if you get them dialed in. I've got to be very careful when I say that. If you get them dialed in, they will make similar decisions. Not always the same decision. That's the interesting thing about large language models, but they can make similar decisions. And so they can be more consistent than even humans sometimes,
Yep.
but there's limits to that, right? So I think that there's going to be more development in the area of AI that's going to give us more confidence over time, but for right now, that's our approach.
Well, what advice would you give to future professionals such as myself on how we can understand the AI risk management and how we can even further grow the existing regulatory standards, like prepared for the future? What advice would you give?
I think you've got to realize that the use of AI, even in risk management, will grow over time. So that will happen. And for those reasons I said, because it can be consistent and never tires out. And all that can lead to better risk management outcomes, right? Or at least more fair risk management outcomes. So I think that it's important to understand, like Laura was just mentioning, where in processes it's good to play, keeping an eye on the state of the technology and determining when you can introduce it into more tasks in those processes. So I think awareness is very important. I think awareness of regulation is super important right now. The EU released an AI Act, I think it was earlier this year. I think it was maybe mid-year. And there's a couple of sections in that act that deal with how we can ensure that, AI is being used appropriately. So I think staying abreast of all those changes is super important. And then, I would say don't rush to replace the human. I wouldn't I wouldn't discount the human yet. We have a much better understanding of context. We can keep a lot more working memory in our head. And so we can see how things fit together at a broader level. And also, we understand consequences. So we understand the impact of decisions on other humans, right? We have that. Most of us have that ethical basis, right? So the human is going to continue to be important in risk management and these more highly sensitive processes for the foreseeable future.
Okay.
Well,
I
speak
like that you said that because me pursuing a career in technology, I always get feedback saying, oh, AI is going to replace you. And I'm like, you need to learn AI so that you can be more effective at whatever it is that you do. Keep up with new trends. Emerging technology is always important to stay abreast to. So I like that you put that in there. It's not ready to replace you.
Yeah, 100%.
well, and then, Tom, if you could put on your future glasses. I hate asking this question because technology is rapidly evolving, it's kinda hard to keep up, and sometimes this question is not fair, but, like, where do you see the future headed with AI?
In general, I think AI is going to definitely transform the workplace. I think what ends up happening over time is that all of us are assisted by AI in some way in our jobs. And the way I think about it is none of us will have the luxury of being an independent contributor.
Mm.
We will have a small team of AI agents that we manage. So we will all be managers, right? And so just like managers, we'll have to make sure that we give it the right information. We'll have to make sure that the outcomes are correct. We'll have to keep it busy. And, if we can take that view, we'll see a lot of gains out of the use of AI in the workplace, and it'll change, you know, what younger generations experience throughout their career dramatically. I think if you take a position of fear, then that's not going to be helpful. And I've been asked the question, will I be forced to use AI? And the reality is yes. And in some cases, you already are. You may not even know it. So AI is already at work behind the scenes in some of the things that employees are doing and that kind of thing. So um, it's a tool that's here to stay. I believe that it's not a game of fear, it's a game of management, right? I think our relationship with AI is a partnership and a management relationship. And my future glasses don't see anything on the horizon that says general artificial intelligence is coming to, take my job or
Mhm.
even cook my meals despite some of those robots. But I think we're just a ways away yet. So
I'm glad you said that. We don't have to fear for, Terminator 6 or whatever
yeah,
the movie sequence is.
right. Yeah. I mean, and I think, when you use AI, even just personally on a daily basis, you'll get a sense for it. You'll see, you're like, hey, that should have been easy for you. And it was not. Or, you trust it to do something complex and it breaks down completely and gives you a completely crazy answer. And so, we've got a ways to go. It's useful, don't get me wrong, but we have a part to play.
So, what skills would you suggest, like a future fintech leader, to focus on? Like, what would be most valuable for the future? Because it is generative AI, so we do have to feed it. So, what do you see?
So I think in terms of skills, I think you've got to build those AI skills and at any level you can. So even if you're not that technical and you can just build the individual personal hands-on use chat GPT for some tasks, you've got to do it. Hopefully you can learn more than that, even if you don't get hands-on with it, like how these technologies work, and some of the ways that they're evolving and that kind of thing. I think it's just crucial. The other thing I would say is if you can develop a systems thinking mindset, that is extremely important. So systems thinking is seeing how things fit
Mhm.
together. It's really having a feeling for the broader people, processes, and data effect and outcome in everything that you see around you, right? Work and otherwise. The reason that's important, like I would recommend that to anybody, regardless of AI. But in the context of AI, if you have a systems mindset, you will see where AI can help and where it can't help. And that is going to be very important for people who are starting out in their careers, because that, I believe, that will be some of the key decisions they make on a regular basis. Back to that concept of having, AI at your fingertips,
Mhm.
you're going to have to figure out where to put it in a process. You're going to have to figure out, if I put it here, what downstream effects will it have on an overall system. So I think that's very crucial.
Well, I love that you say that, Tom. Relating it to my experience as a project and product manager, it was the same. It was knowing all of the tools I had that were available to me and being able to piecemeal things together to achieve the goal of delivering on time with, at cost or under budget and with quality. And sometimes it resulted in us thinking outside of the box. We're going to put this in the cloud versus on prem and having to evaluate infrastructure costs and being able to do that assessment. And I call it critical thinking skills, but I like how you illustrated that because I think if people think of it as a system, it's being able to put all those pieces together. And that's
Right.
an art. That's an art that no one can take away from you. And AI can't really replicate or replace because sometimes it's relationships
Absolutely.
deliver, this team deliver well? Are we're gonna onshore it or offshore it? Like, there's all these different variables that have to be considered, and sometimes that's, like, in our brains.
Absolutely. And another thing about AI, go back to that working memory, right? Even as they increase the amount of working memory, you'll hear tokens, right? The number of tokens that an AI model can process. So Gemini's up to 1 million tokens, right? What does that mean? Well, that's a lot. That's a lot of memory, right? Um, but what they're finding is that these models may not do a good job of navigating that entire context.
Mm.
So just because it's available to them doesn't mean that they're navigating it as effectively as a human navigates, its working memory. So, so yeah, I mean, it's understanding the limitations, understanding how to frame things up and work together, communicate with one another. All those things are very human, right? Right.
Yeah. Just as we wrap up, I kinda wanna and Tiffany, maybe we'll hear from you first.
Okay.
This conversation, you asked some great questions and also tied into your personal experience. You're around it, you're surrounded by students who have their own concerns or have different applications of how they're using it. What do you think about this conversation? What do you take away?
So for me, I want to learn as much as AI as I can. I think that AI is what is going to push us forward, and we're going to see things that we've never seen before. I'm excited. That's the biggest thing I can say is I'm excited to see how this progresses financial services. 'Cause instantaneous payments, I think that that would be the future. I don't know if you guys follow Western Union. Even they posted, Laura, you were at our hackathon, and a lot of people were trying to come up with solutions on instantaneous borderless payments, and they just released that they are about to release that. So the future is endless.
Yeah, it really
I
is.
don't even think the sky is the limit at this point. It's just it's just going
Wow.
crazy, and I'm excited.
Yeah, actually, Tom, this came up repeatedly in that hackathon Tiffany's talking about. Cross-border
Mhm.
real-time payments, stablecoin came up, as well as a little bit of a mention for Corpay and their cross-border services as
Oh,
well.
nice.
So, yeah, nice connecting the dots, in this conversation. But Tom, any
Yeah.
last thoughts that you have for our student or professional community that's listening in?
Sure. I would just encourage everybody not to be intimidated. Everybody's learning right now. That old saying, there are no stupid questions. Everybody's asking stupid questions right now. So just do not be intimidated. Experience it for yourself. Don't believe what other people are telling you and make your own decision. Use some of that critical thinking that Laura talked about.
Perfect. Way to wrap up with a mention of my quote. Thank you, Tom. All right. And for everyone listening in, thank you so much for joining us for another FinTech Talks episode. Thank you, Tom Pierce and Tiffany Davidson, for joining us today. It's such a great conversation. And for those that are out there looking to connect with the FinTech community, we have a lot of events coming up on our website. So please connect with us. Continue to follow us on LinkedIn and on Instagram for more content like this. Thank you all.
Thank you. Have a good
Thank you.
one. Bye.